Hagstom Ultra Swede, and it's got a very deformed neck. As a matter of fact, when the customer was here and he dropped it off, we noticed that the neck had a total C shape to it, shaped like a banana, with a very low spot in the middle, very high frets on this end. So I went ahead and already skimmed those off 10/1000ths of an inch, and it did help some, but not enough. It still didn't change the fact that the neck was all crazy. Now when you tighten the truss rod, what happens is the neck, the fret rocker rocks right at the 4th fret, right there. But over here, in this area of the neck, is still completely scooped. So it goes down and then up and then back down. So these frets buzz and the action's too high in the middle. Right beyond the 4th fret, action's too high here. And then it appears to take on this just huge ski jump, which is only happening because there's not enough compression in this area, is what I figured. So I'm going to go in here. I already marked these frets. I'm going to pull these out. So what do we do when we got a severely deformed neck? First thing I did was tried a little fret work to no avail. Next thing I did was clamp the neck in my neck straightening jig, or trying to create a back bow, which was very effective. It did indeed work by using a 250 watt heat lamp, but it's not wonderfully perfect. What I'm feeling here, just first thoughts about the very first fret that I'm pulling, is that came out too easy. So indeed, my first suspicion that there was not enough compression going on in this area was because before I leveled the frets, I took feeler gauges. I took 4/1000ths of an inch, and I went up here and I put it underneath each fret, and it's a big gap. See that huge, that feeler gauge should not go underneath the fret like that. They're seated real well on the ends, but in the middle they're lifted. So first thing you want to do is try to seat any of these frets before you level it. And they weren't seating down. They weren't seating themselves, basically, which made me wonder if these are stainless steel. Either way, I think I'll pull 6 frets, drop a little super glue in there maybe, just to get some rigidity, and then pound them back in and see if it helps compress that area of the fretboard right there into a slight back bow. Okay, so now that I've got those 6 frets pulled out, I'll try to show you what I'm getting at here. Should see a slight gap in that area. As a matter of fact, you could put a feeler gauge under there, probably 5/6,000ths of an inch right here in this area. But over here in this area, you got a high spot at the 5th, in between the 4th and 5th fret. That's because I have the truss rod tightened. After I pound in these 6 frets, I want to create no gap here. As a matter of fact, I'd like to see this rocking more towards this area. Then I can back off the truss rod and have this area raise back up while this area stays flat, giving us the shape of a fretboard that we're after. Alright, changed my course of action here. I was going to put this Teflon in and drop super glue in to get it to weep into the end grain of the ebony, creating more rigidity. But first what I did is I stuck a razor blade down in here. Let's do it over here so you can see. I dropped a razor blade in. I took a mark, pull it back out, and look at the depth of that fret tang. That's insanity. We're at, okay, the fret tangs themselves are 70 thousandths of an inch. We're looking at depths of twice the depth of the tang. Oh no, that's right, 70 thousandths. We're at 140 thousandths. I mean, these slots are twice as deep as they need to be, which in itself causes this problem. A noodly neck that can't keep straight is due to either the fret slots being too wide for the tang or being way too deep. And these were not filled with glue. So I think what I can do is fill it with fish glue, put the frets back in, clamp the neck into a slight back bow, and let it dry for a couple days. That should hold it. It didn't take a whole lot to clean out these slots. There was no glue, and they're way too deep. They're just about the right width. I like to take an X-Acto blade and run it down in there and vacuum it out. And then lastly, I take like an 8 thousandths of an inch feeler gauge and some naphtha and just get the rest of that sawdust out of there. See that? That got a lot of ebony dust out of there. Yep, that works. And that's about all the extent of all the cleaning I need to do on these. I can wipe the fret tangs down a little with a little naphtha also. And then get my, I gotta go to my other workbench though to put the frets back. One more thing before I head on down to the fretting bench is I labeled each fret. So this is fret number 11. Starting on the base side, I put 11 Sharpie dots. On number 10, I did 10 Sharpie dots. Now, just in case I drop this whole thing and it ends up on the floor, they're all labeled and marked exactly how they're going to go back in. Alrighty. Keep in mind, these methods might not work for your project. You know, I don't know your fret tang width or depth or what the slots are looking like underneath your frets. That's just something to keep in mind. I mean, this is how to do it, kind of, but you have to take each guitar on a guitar by guitar basis, you know. This method just isn't going to work for every situation. And that's kind of the way it goes with all guitar repairs. Right now with X-Acto blades, you know, I've got some old X-Acto blades, they're kind of dull. And I'll just make sure that slot's nice and full. Get a paper towel to set the blade on. You get a little water ready. Maybe I take a little water on a sponge. Just have that soak in there and have it on hand here for a cleanup. Alright, so here it goes. I've got fret number 5. When I was pulling those frets out, what happened is I slightly flattened them out, so they lost a little bit of their radius. This guitar has a 12-inch radius fretboard, and I'm pretty sure we're not dealing with stainless steel frets right now because my experience with stainless steel is that whatever shape it's in, it will stay in that shape for life. I mean, you can pound it down into a flatter shape, but it'll spring back up in a little bit of time. I just over radiused it to more of a let's see where I'm at with the radius here. Okay, holding it up to my radius gauge, I've got about a 9.5 radius going on this fret, and the fretboard's a 12, so when I pound it in, it should flatten itself out. A couple taps on each end and a couple taps in the middle. I got my wet paper towel. Wipe off that excess glue. I'm going to take my 4/1000ths of an inch feeler gauge, see if I can set it under there. Yeah, still going in underneath. Let's give her a couple more taps. See how we're looking now. Going under a little bit on the bass side. Treble side seated pretty nice. Okay, one more whack on the bass side. And it's pretty tight. Pretty good. Yeah. That's another thing. This hammering method might not be the best method for the next guy or the next guitar, but this is going to work for the Hagstrom. I've only got 7 frets that I'm doing, and I'm filling the slots right up to the top with this glue just to make sure it's all filled up. Other thing I noticed with these, I'm going to over radius this one. This is fret number 9. They're bending pretty easily with my thumb. So I guess this standard garden variety fret wire. It's not stainless steel. Check each fret's radius before putting it in. A little over 9.5 inches. So it's probably like a 7 1/4 inch radius is what I just... Oh, I also found out that maybe because of the ebony, but the brass side of the hammer is more effective seating these guys than the rubber side or plastic side. This one, doing that teeter-tottering little thing. See, seated good in the middle. Well, not seated so good. All the frets are back in their slots. I've just wiped up some of that excess fish glue. That's drying off. Okay, I've got a little block of wood with a 12-inch radius right there between the 4th and 5th fret. Another little block of wood on the 12th fret. These are the 7 frets that I replaced. I'm going to clamp it into a back bow. I've got a little piece of the, I don't know what that's called, a neck support caul. Can't remember what they call it, but I just cut off little pieces of it and use it as needed. A screw clamp, a bar clamp is a 12-inch clamp. And I'm going to go right in between those 2 radiused pieces of wood and give her a firm clamping. Now I got to eyeball this. How much of a back bow I want to put in here. And kind of sight down the fretboard edge to see how much of a back bow I'm getting. Yeah, I've got one going on. A little back bow going on right there. Let it set for a couple days. What we got now is a straight neck. What we had before, I mean, it's got the relief. It's not here at the 7th fret where I normally like to see it. It's kind of more in this area than 10th fret. But what we had before was a fretboard that was just completely curved. And then when I clamped the neck and tightened the truss rod a little bit more, we still had this curve, but it back bowed starting at the 5th fret. It started to back bow, and there was a lot of buzz going on here. So after I pulled these frets, filled it with glue, and clamped it into a back bow in this region, it's just, I mean, like I said before, I wasn't going to know if it was going to work until I did it, and it did work. This is one nice looking neck. It's got, I mean, it's not perfect still, but I claim guitar progress, not guitar perfection. It plays nice. I did have to I did have to re-level the frets just with the diamond file and re-crown and re-polish. So it was a lot of work. This guitar took a week and a half to finally come to a conclusion what I needed to do with it to get it right. And it took a lot of work, many hours, way more hours than I charged the person for. But that's no big deal to me. I can't let stuff like that start to bother me or annoy me. You know, the time it takes to get something right is just the time it takes. And hope you can see how very straight we got this neck. If you can't see it from that side, you can certainly see it from this side. Looking down, that is one straight neck. Amazingly straight.